morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're listening to us from. Welcome to Footprints. Today our guest is Judy Kamanyi. We're absolutely glad to have you, Judy. Can you tell our audience a bit about yourself?
My name's Judy Ann Kamanyi.
You're Anne.
Yes, I'm Ann.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Born and bred here in Uganda, in fact, particularly in Kampala. Attended school, initially outside, and then came back to Uganda, did my primary education, Arakan Primary School, which was a prime school in those days. Then
And these days, to give people context, is like 19 when?
1960s, like 1964, post-independence. Yeah. Then from Agakan Primary School, I proceeded to Gayaza High School. Did my secondary and higher education.
You my OG. I had to put that in. Gayaza High School is like one of the best, the leading girls' schools in Uganda. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so, and then from Gayaza, proceeded to Makerere, then did a postgraduate course in personnel management in the London School of Economics. Came back, started work, continued studies much later on. And I think I need to talk about that particular aspect of continuing studies much later on. I opted to do a master's when I was 49.
Oh, very wow.
Yeah. And in my class, I was the eldest. Doing a master's with people who just graduated from university in the US. So they were in their 20s. I think the youngest was about 20, 21. But that didn't discomfort me from my use that word. If anything, it enabled me push myself. And for me, it's what is in you that enables you to get where you are. Because sometimes you think, another younger generation, they have it. But you also bring what you have with you. So in many instances, I did very well in class. And one thing they kept asking me, again, you see, have the context of you coming from Africa, and then you're kind of put in this bracket, that perhaps you're not as knowledgeable as they are. So when you tell them things about themselves, they say, but how did you know that about us? And then I would say, but I read newspapers, I watch television. So they would always want to kind of put you in a box, and then they'll try to qualify that, yeah, she knows because she does that, and of course, I don't know, you may be familiar with, as America, you always have to kind of prove yourself. There are different strata in terms of classism in the United States of America. And if you're coming from Africa, then you're actually at the bottom tier. Yeah. So it becomes, so even with then you have the African Americans above that, and then, so you all quite started trying to prove yourself in class and outside of class. So for me, that period that I was there enabled me understand more about myself, but then also more about humanity and what it is that differentiates that. But then I got a better understanding that human beings, wherever we are the same. The same.
Indeed.
Because those experiences there, you would also perhaps even find them.
Right.
Find them here. Yeah.
So, Judy, in your journey, when did you first become a leader, or when did you first notice that you had leadership qualities?
Right from school. I remember being appointed a prefect in senior 4, then moving to higher school, and then being appointed a deputy head clerk. But then going back to senior 4, I didn't quite see it in me, but then my teachers saw it in me, because then I ended up being the first recipient, and I haven't heard anything subsequent to that. That was when Miss Cox was still the headmistress. I got what they called a leadership award.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, when we entered senior 5, it did happen again. Neither did it happen again in senior 6, but I may be wrong, but I don't remember that. And as a prize, I was given a book by Miss Cox. So in other words, they saw some leadership in me. But then again, it's somebody else kind of drawing my attention to that. Yeah. So basically, I think that's how it.
That's amazing. And what would you count in your long arc as one of your leadership highs and one of your leadership lows? Like something that really tested you as a leader, and then something that made you absolutely proud. Like, yes, I'm glad I was a leader for this situation.
There's so many glads. If I can say that, for me again, because I get involved in politics. So even when I was at Ackford, one thing that still sticks to mind, it isn't so much about, it's a combination of leadership, but then also working in a team. The issue around at the time when the parliament was discussing qualification for you to become. I remember it was Sir Sheila Kalma and Lydia Gassida of Finance Trust, and wake up and think, no. When you look at the statistics, if the bar had been set too high, you're not going to get the people. And about 3/4 of the districts then in Uganda would have women and women's council. Yeah. So for me, that even up to now still identifies what it is to lead in on a certain issue. I know it's mainly about advocacy and so on, but it's more than that. And in a way, succeeding. But looking back, I regret that particular process was never documented. It was captured definitely by Sanyu Television, which was the only television that existed in those days. Yeah. And the fact that
aside UTV.
Yeah, I mean private.
Private, yes.
Yeah, it's only private. And the fact that Parliament picked it up, and then again, I give credit to who was the deputy speaker at that time, Betty. Oh gosh, I forget the other second name. Who then said, "Okay, go back, go on recess, go and consult," which they did. I took a 2-week break. But then you see, you spoke in public, somebody picks it up, and then it snowballs, and it does produce positive nuance. Because then they came back and said, yes, okay, I'm quite sure some may not have even gone to consult. But then in Parliament, they actually agreed that if they had been given information, they wouldn't have come up with the original proposals of setting the bar
for education in particular.
Yeah. For that. Not that education is not important, but then you need to start somewhere, and then you gradually build the numbers for you to get the number, Yeah. So for me, that for me is the one that actually sticks out for
a leadership high.
Yeah, a leadership high. And then it's for me it's leadership is for you starting, and then you allow those who are involved to then take the process forward and conclude. And indeed, Parliament conclude as it is for now. Let us set the bar at this level. As more women get educated, as more women enter higher school and acquire, but they've had the bar at A level. Yes. And how many women had then had that particular qualification? Yes. So then as the numbers move through, then we go. So that's how it actually happened. For me, that was the high. Lows. Leadership. No, I suppose it's trying to do something and then people not seeing what you want to do. Those have been many, but then you wish that I wished that I had the opportunity to spend more time taking people on in terms of seeing what the common good would be, like for example, on the issue of the girl child, and when you listen at what people say even after now, around the rights of the girl child, for me those are, in spite of all the work that I had been involved in and contributed, and then you see you've moved 2 steps forward and then almost 3 steps back. Those for me are the lows, and I keep saying to myself, oh my goodness, where did we go? Where did I go wrong in terms of not getting people to understand, that if the girl child is at that particular level, we all benefit. So it is a continuing struggle, to kind of get people to understand. I sometimes I can't even believe some of the things that, people still say about the girl child and up to now. So I say to myself, when did I not contribute effectively when I had the the opportunity? But then of course I realized that it's something that you can't do on your own,
or fix in a day.
But then you say, when you look at the amount of work that has gone into it, and the fact that 30 years on, we're still talking about the same issue. So then I said, no, what is it that we didn't do then when we had the opportunity? What is it? So most times I say to myself, I wish I could go back in history, and make sure that everything was actually kind of covered. So those for me is one of the lows. And I cannot. In fact, that's why many a time when I try to blame others, I said, but I'm part of the equation. Yeah, I was there then. What is it
That I do.
that I did? Yeah. So instead of pointing fingers to other people, yeah, I say, you were there. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And there've been so many of those. So many.
Yeah. And to describe the scene for those that are listening to us, as Judy is asking herself this question in the room that we're sitting, above her is a picture of Wangari Maathai, who we all know as a green activist, activist for green spaces. She fought a lot for protecting trees and protecting, climate and natural resources. And I was wondering, I wonder if she, even from where she is, asked herself, what didn't I do? Because now it's a global crisis. Exactly. Maybe then it was a Kenya thing or a local, but now, and just like you're saying, Judy, that, yeah, maybe then, but now it's everybody around the world is talking about girls. And like you said, it's sad that we're still where we are today. Then when does the needle shift?
Exactly.
And I think I hear what you're saying about what didn't we do. And I think that's what a leader does not pass the buck, looks at themselves and takes responsibility. So I appreciate that. But I think also to acknowledge also the work, the money, the sweat equity that you guys did, even for us to be having the conversation about girls, or even for us to be having the conversation about climate justice.
Yeah.
That, for me, that contribution, that it is something we're talking about.
Yes.
I think is a very powerful contribution for your generation. So as we think about taking responsibility, every leader at some point needs to take responsibility for transition. So, and I'm sure in your work life, there were many points of transitioning until where you are right now. So what transition when did you start thinking about your eventual transition out of formal, 9 to 5, I have to be at an office somewhere? What was that process like for you? When did you start thinking about it, contemplating it as a leader?
Strangely enough, I never. Yeah, I didn't, and I suppose that is kind of peculiar to me as an individual, because having worked initially in the public sector, then moving into private sector, then moving to the NGO sector, and then moving into consultancy work quite early. You kind of stick, and I'm still stuck in the work mode.
Yes.
Inside. So at the personal level, I as an individual, in my mind, it is something that has happened, but it isn't that I did it consciously. Yeah, I would say that perhaps it's because I didn't go through the process of me being awakened. Around that, there could be one, or perhaps not wanting to address the issue of transition, which is a negative thing. I think about that, because if you have a mindset that does not look far into the future, and you look at perhaps just today and tomorrow, and you get stuck in that, that is what happens. And that in my case, I think that is what actually happened. Looking back I can see that it has had a negative impact in terms of preparation. Yeah. But then I then asked myself, why in my mind did I shut it out? Yeah. Because perhaps it's got to do with me as an individual. You keep on going. And then you keep on telling yourself, I can't still go. I think it's me as it's about me as an individual, because I've never given up work. Yes. Even now, I'm still consulting. Yeah. And sometimes it's an 8 to 5 situation. In fact, sometimes it's almost even 7 days a week, depending on the assignment. The assignment, what is actually required. So being in that mode of work. I think when you can work no more. Yeah. So that is where I am coming from.
But at the same time, even as you say that, you did change from, like you even enumerated the sectors. So at the moment that you're changing from private sector from public to private to NGO, were there things you did as you transitioned from one space to another?
In things that I did in what?
In terms of preparing yourself for your new stage, or how preparing yourself to leave the old stage?
No, I didn't. Or if it did, it did happen. It just happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the issue of transition, to be honest with you, and succession, in my case, is something that consciously I've been made aware of over the last, let's say, 6 years. Interesting. That's when the discussions around that have emerged. And I'm quite sure you'll find when you go to any sector, whether it's the private or the public, you'll find that many people have mentally not thought about that. I don't need to give you examples of that, of what we actually see. People are just told, sorry, you've reached retirement age, and many are shocked. They can't believe that they've come to the end of their road. And then people then struggle to make that shift mentally. Yeah. And trying to cope and telling themselves, no, I'm still in that particular situation, and not wanting to let go. And it takes them 1 year, 2 years, 3 years to realize, because they haven't been taken. I see so many examples. Yeah. I don't know whether I have arrived at that, because like I told, I'm still working. Perhaps a day will come when I'm no longer, I have to put that pen down. But yeah, I have to put that pen down.
Yes.
And then
close that laptop. Yeah.
So and I'm glad, now you find people talking about it more. Because even as I speak right now, you go to many institutions and it's succession planning. What are you talking about? Yeah. And if you look at most strategy plans of entities, that particular component is not integrated as part of staff development. Yeah. That particular component. Yeah, they give you the training, the mentoring, the coaching, this is what you need to do. But then the issue of when you have to leave is not discussed. Right? And therefore, I think that is something that we really need to work. And I see, because I serve on so many people. Yeah. And I see it, you look at that and it's just like that. Yeah, so then we need help as leaders, for example, serving on a board. We need to make sure that we help people think through what next when I leave? What next if I don't get, for example, unemployment? What next? What is it that I can do? That for many entities it's not happening.
Wow. Okay. No, that's very powerful what you say. I remember having a conversation with another elder, and she was coming to the end of her time at one of the universities here. And she said so you know it, but your mind does not want to, yes, remind it. Exactly. And she said she even got the letter, and she said she put it deep in some drawer and would not look at it for a while. And so when you say it's a mental thing, right? I see her telling me that story, and I wonder what the fears might be, and then how you talk to a young leader now about facing that inevitability. What would you advise?
My advice would be fair and simple, is that you get to a time when you have to stop working. Yeah. And when that particular happens, what plan do you have ahead of you? That discussion is not happening. Yeah, and I don't know, somehow as human beings, we always think that life will go on. Yeah?
Yeah.
Even when we wake up in the morning, we take so many things for granted. You wake up in the morning, or even the night before, you sleep and you take it for granted that you wake up the following day. And you may, and that all your faculties will be to be working. Yeah. So people getting to understand that the inevitable will come, and how would you prepare for that? What do you need to do? What do you need to have in place? How do you know? How do you navigate that transition from where you are, where you have to be, where you may end, etc. So that for me is the advice that I'd give the young people, including
our young intern.
Young intern. Yeah. I know we shy away from so many difficult situations. Like even I would ask her, if tomorrow your mom was not around, what would you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the kind of discussion that we need to have with our children. Standing in our children, yeah. If I'm not around, what are you?
No, I know. I have tried to have it with my boys, and they say, "Mom, don't even." They don't know. So yes, we go all night. Yeah, don't take me there. It's it's too unknown. It's too it's too many things, right? Like, no, let's proceed with life.
Yeah, let's proceed with life. And unfortunately, most of us, and including myself, that's where proceed with life. Yeah, but then we need to step back and look at the inevitable. I think. Let me just give you an example. Yeah. Because my mother is South African, so half of my family is in South Africa. So last weekend, one of my cousins unveiled the tombstone of her husband and son. She decided to do it simultaneously. Then family sent me photographs and videos, etc. So when I looked at the videos, I could see that her husband was there on one side, and then her son was on the other side. But then behind each one of them were two other, what looked like similar graves, but not marked. Mm-hmm. So I communicated with my cousin. I said, but I see other graves behind, and you say you are unveiling tombstones. And this in fact is a very good example of preparing. Then my cousin communicated and she said, you know what? T decided, because it was herself, a husband and two sons. And that was their gravesite. So then she decided that when their time comes to go, she doesn't want the stones that they have used to be different from the ones that. So you have a replica of what is here and there behind for herself and the son. So when their time comes, the thing will be clear, will be uniform. And it was really done. Black marble with the tiling and so on. I've never for me seen such. But you can see for her, she's thinking about what she wants it to look like when she got how many friends. Yeah. So that for me is again, a person who has that. She has the gift for that. And so,
yes, I've just do it to him for
the photograph. Yeah, when we finish.
No, and when you see that, I mean, I'm sure those of us listening to this podcast today will have watched, seen, heard of just the way the crown prepared for the passing of the late Queen Elizabeth. And maybe for them, yes, it's tradition, but that's what you're saying. It should become part of what we do, that you prepare, that you think about it and plan it to the T as much as you possibly can. Because one day it will happen.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you. I think for me, what I take away from our conversation today is it's a mind thing. So we need to get our minds in the right place, because then we will prepare. Because it will, and then also not to take things for granted. So if today, and my dad used to say, live today as though it were your last. I mean, we say these things, but then we live different, right? It's so such a contradiction. Because we don't want to think about the end here. So leaders out there, if you're listening to this, just press pause. For once, press pause. And whatever pause will look like for you, to write it down, to think about it, to have a conversation with another friend to say, by the way, that day is coming. And of course, yes, we're talking about the inevitable end when we shall all transition out of this life, but we're also talking about work situations that one day, that day will come. So how are you pressing forward to prepare for that? Preparation.
Yeah.
As we wind down, as we close, I don't know if there's just one last parting shot that you have for us, Judy.
Yeah, I do have a parting shot. For me, life is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many stages in that journey. And it's very important at every stage to stop, reflect, and say, what next?
Yeah.
Next stop, what next? What adjustments do I need to make? What preparations do I need to undergo? So you kind of have a roadmap with milestones and say and at the end of every stage, just have a kind of a checklist where you tick off and say, yeah, I've done this, I've prepared for this, done this, etc. And then go back again to make sure that, you've done what you've set out to do. For me, I think that will, but again, I think we still have a lot of work to do, especially at all stages in life and for all generations. Yeah. Our generation, the ones that are behind us, we still have a lot of work to do around that issue of transitioning.
Judy, it's been amazing having you as our guest today. Thank you so much. I feel like I too need to go and do my homework. And very powerful how you end your last reflection. I recently, walking the streets of social media, came upon a post by Taka Awori, and she wrote down 5 questions that we need to ask ourselves this year. And the 5th question in that 5 questions relates to what you've told us about. How and when will I make time to pause for strategic reflection and replenishment? And that's literally what you told us. Have the roadmap, and those stop signs are important. It's not all green light. Nope. There are stop signs.
Yep.
So it's our gift To you, as we end this podcast, how and when will you make time to pause for strategic reflection and replenishment? And one of the strategic reflection points is transition. Thank you so much for listening to us. Judy, it was amazing having you as our guest today. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Till next time when we bring you another guest. Bye.